In my mind, mathematicians are coming as individuals, single-minded people. According to Grigori Perelman, many of them are conformists. Perelman is anything but a conformist. He is the only man who managed to solve, the only person who managed to solve the Millennium problem. He was awarded $1 million. He was awarded the Fields Medal at 2006, which is equivalent to a Nobel Prize in mathematics. He refused both of them. He's a very unusual character. He managed to transcend the world of mathematics because of his unusual decisions. We'll speak about him today. Professor Misha?
Yes, very interesting. Kind of Grigori Perelman is attracting so much attention from so many people, like millions of people who are normally are not interested in mathematics at all.
Exactly.
And it's not been like 1 month or 1 year, it's been already at least 13 years, probably more than 13 years.
2002, I believe, he released his proof to the internet.
He released his proof in 2000 something. There were preprints, three preprints, which were done in 2003, 2004, 2005, approximately that years. And in 2010, it was decided that they couldn't find any problems with his proof because
it took time to verify. That's how complicated the solution and the whole problem is to begin with the Poincare conjecture. Let's just make sure that we say it.
Yes. So okay, let's step back a little bit because it was very useful and good introduction. And some people might think that Grigori Perelman doesn't need an introduction, but maybe for some people he does. So if we step a little bit back, so in the end of the last century, last millennium, there were found 7 problems, which they were named the problems of the millennium, not the problem of 21st century, but the problems of the third millennium. And lo and behold, in the first years of this new millennia, Grigori Perelman was able to solve, to find the solution, as we spoke last time. It's actually finding the solution of one of those millennium problems, namely the Poincare conjunction. So, and this Poincare conjunction now is known as Poincare-Perelman theorem.
By the way, I think he proved it indirectly, right? Through the Thorstone conjecture. There was another conjecture similar to Fermat's theorem with Taniyama-Shimura. This shows the beauty of mathematics, how one theorem leads to another theorem.
Yes. Well, how we spoke about the last theorem of Fermat in our series, so please look at it. So we were saying that by proving some theorem, it's not only finding a very beautiful solution, which is like a piece of art, like chess problem, like a beautiful music or poetry. It also opens a completely new horizons, new kind of languages being invented in the process of proving this type of theorems. So the same thing has happened in the solution of the Poincare conjecture. So, but what I want to say, one thing which was very interesting with him, with Grigori Perelman, that he is the only person so far, as you correctly said, who so far this millennium, this century, this 23 years of this century and millennium, was able to sort out one of the problems. Also, he attracts so much attention because he, as you again correctly said, refused
a substantial sum of money, and he is not a rich man either. He lives in a very humble, not to say poor conditions.
Yeah, I would say even poor condition. And before that, he rejected the
Fields Medal as well, 2006. I believe that Terence Tao, extremely celebrated mathematician, he won on the same year. He won the Fields Medal.
And also he rejected, I think in 1996, another award, which actually shows that it was not like a momentarily desire not to accept the huge award of the millennium, because it's already been at least 3 times on the period of the last 27 years or so. So I would say kind of it would be a combination of these 2 very rare events. One is to win these awards, which very few people do. And secondly, actually, in fact, he's quite unique.
No one, when it comes to Millennium problem, Fields Medal is something different, but it's still incredible. It's the highest accolade you can get in mathematics. Before you cannot win it after the age of 40.
Yes, it is it is done once in 4 years for the mathematicians on the age of 40. And also, like, we know that every year there is a Nobel Prize being awarded on quite a few subjects. And I don't remember, you might didn't especially look at it, but I don't remember that anybody refused any of the Nobel Prizes. You might know better.
I think that there was someone, I don't know if he refused it, but I'm a musician, and Bob Dylan is a great songwriter.
Bob
I think
Dylan,
that he
yes,
received
Bob
in
Dylan,
literature and he didn't like or didn't. I'm not sure if he refused, but he was not about to attend or.
Yes, I remember recently Bob Dylan was, but if we look at the number, just I being again probably a mathematician and liking the numbers, I always try to understand, to put things in perspective, because among the Nobel Prize winners, which is in every subject between 1 and 3 people, and there are about 7 subjects for the last 100 years. So if we take 100 times 7 times 2, we're talking about more than 1,000 people received the Nobel Prizes, and very, very few of any refused it. So that's kind of putting him completely
in a very special group, which is it's a set of Grigori Perelman. There was another story, to interrupt. I got to say it because I don't want to forget it. Grothendieck, Alexander Grothendieck. Very similar story to Perelman. Before Perelman, very single-minded, Jewish from the father's side. His father was a revolutionary in Russia before communism took over. And he refused the Crawford Award. The Crawford Award was a big money as well. It was, I think, something equivalent to $250,000, and he won it probably in the 70s. I'm not sure about the date, but he refused it, and he was furious when anyone suggested that he should accept it. People used to send him letters explaining and trying to reason with him why he should accept it, for all kind of wild reasons, like take the money, give it to us, we'll make a documentary about you refusing to take the money. He got so upset about it. Yes, Misha.
Yes, and that's a very interesting situation with him. And well, I was kind of thinking again about all the situation, money, accepting money or not. And for me, it's very, very mixed feeling, because it actually triggers in me, and I think in many people, and that's why it is so much, this kind of refusal of the money had such a resonance. That what is our relationship with money, our individual relationship with money, our relationship with money as a society in general, our relationship with money and kind of more broadly with a career as a scientific community, not only mathematicians. And there are kind of quite a few comments can be made there. I even don't know if it would be enough time. Maybe we'll do the second one. I don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah, say what you feel. What you think about it. I got my opinions about the situation.
Let's start. So the one is that there were always kind of through history among the scientific community there were a bit the kind of mixed relationship with the financial things. There were people who were very, very pleased to be rich and accept money. There were people like Diogen with the Alexander the Great.
Diogenes. Yes, well, we spoke about him in the last
last time. Yes, who was, because when I think about Perelman, I think straight away about him, and he who was having very alternative lifestyle. He was living like in this big barrel or whatever, before, and he was criticizing people and kind of arguing with them. But at the same time, he made a very profound influence on the society, on the thought. We all remember him, and everybody who is studying kind of ancient Greek philosophy is thinking about him. At the same time, more than that, Alexander the Great apparently after meeting him said, if I were not Alexander,
I would like to be him. Yeah, I would have loved to be born and be Diogenes, something like that.
Diogenes. While first kind of it sounds a very good phrase, but at the same time he was a disciple of great Aristotle.
Exactly.
There was Plato was relatively recently part of the, and even Plato called him more or less like a mad Socrates.
And he was an emperor. We are talking about Alexander the Great, no less.
No less, one of the probably most celebrated, leaders
in
of the world. in history, the person in a way who made possible the Hellenistic, people kind of forget about it, but because of his conquest of Syria and Egypt, the war culture of Alexandria, culture of Antioch was possible because before him, Greece was basically a small group of the small city-states like Athens and Syracuse and Italy, etc., etc. His conquest made possible like a huge spread of the science. It wasn't his desire in a way of that moment. But what I was saying, kind of at the same time, there were people who were very money-oriented. The person who you admire so much in all of us, and we will speak about him more and more, about Euler.
Euler, yes.
Euler negotiated a fantastic deal with Catherine the Great.
I'm not
Are you familiar about that?
I don't know about it actually. You talk about Descartes or you talk about...
No, I talk about
Euler, sorry,
Euler.
Yes, yes.
Euler, basically the Empress of Russia, who's German herself, Catherine the Great, she saw that her Academy of Sciences is kind of in a bad state. And she decided, and she also heard that Euler had problems with Friedrich the Great.
I called him my Cyclop. He was trying, to insult his bad side.
Very, very kind of unkind comments about the person who at that time lost sight in one of his eyes.
And then became completely blind. And kept on producing great mathematics to the last day of his life.
Yes, and Catherine the Great, she invited him, and she offered him 1800 rubles per annum, which was probably equivalent of $1 million now. I would not be particularly surprised that this amount of money more than Perelman would have in a kind of one-off. And you know what did Euler say? He said no, I'm not going for 1800. He demanded 3,000. He demanded the pension for his wife if she...
He had 10 kids or something like that. He had a big family, by the way.
Yes.
Perelman is a single man as far as I know. And I'm not giving it as an excuse. I'm just saying he had a family to think about and a big family as well. Euler.
Yes. And
it's a bit different.
And he insisted that three of his sons get a job. So, and the Catherine the Great said, yes, sir. And the money, I was just looking at this and these things. He was getting Euler only for himself, without his son's money. He was getting 250 cows equivalent every month. So he was getting in silver more the money than $1 million every year. He probably was getting more money than generals of the army, because for that time it was kind of enormous amount of money. So, and we still love Euler.
Yes,
so yes. What I'm trying to say...
But I never knew about that, by the way. I love Euler for all his incredible discoveries in mathematics.
Exactly. So,
but I get your point.
Well, the point is that you can be very, very successful.
Yes,
and be very celebrated, and financially, and you can be very refused it and be very, very celebrated.
Yeah, but I think, I understand your point. I think that Perelman works in a different landscape, and today especially, maybe because I live in these present times, and it's not like I cannot reflect on past times. I always try to put myself in the place of people from the past when I think about them, like we talked about it last time. And I think that Perelman was really dissatisfied with the state of ethics in mathematics, and he didn't like what was going on there. And in general, for me, his achievement, if anything, by the way, I got to tell you, is that when I look at popular culture in general, and I look at, there are some let's say, artists or some people who are, I don't know if to call them philosophers, but influencers, who came from certain niche and built themselves very organically from the grassroots, and suddenly became successful, and you could see how almost anyone can be bought with money. Anyone can be corrupt. Anyone can be changed. You know what? And that's what I mean. And it's like Perelman said, not with me. That's why I so much admire his decision. He said, not with me. You are not going to buy me. You are not going to change me. And I also believe, by the way, that's an interesting thing. Tell me what you think about it. I think that mathematician, and especially someone like him, who always been very different, even within the community, I think, from what I understand, is constantly searching for the truth. So is it possible for him to walk against his truth? You know what I mean? As a mathematician.
What do you mean exactly?
As a mathematician, mathematicians looking for truths, right? This is what it is about. So is it possible actually that this is just an extension of his idealistic mindset as a mathematician? That's my truth, and I'm going to keep to my truth. My truth says that I'm not going to accept the $1 million. I'm not going to accept the Fields Medal. It's not part of the deal. I haven't done it for it, and I'm not satisfied with what I'm doing, with what is going to happen once I'm going to receive it. The implications of it, even if it means personally, you know. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Absolutely understand. How I understand you, let me rephrase it. So in order to be successful in any, be genius, in order to be successful in anything like what he has been successful. Again, I'm coming back and back to people who I admire, like Mozart, because Mozart is more kind of known, more seen in popular culture. We had films about him, etc. You need a combination of a few things. One is, of course, you need to be a genius. It's something which you're born with a kind
it's
of.
not just the attitude.
Right. But on top of that, you need to have certain single-mindedness, certain ability to work very hard, certain kind of strength of the character. And if you think about great mathematicians, Euler, Paul Erdős, which we spoke last
It's another
time.
guy that is very unusual, yes? Another guy who didn't live for the money, for the materialistic rewards.
Perelman, the people kind of, they're very single-minded. They serve, as Greeks would say, to serve the muse. They serve, mathematicians serve mathematics, the other scientists, it could be physics, it could be music, it could be art, it could be anything. But you serve, the religious people, the spiritual people serve the truth on the kind of spiritual way. But the idea, and why these people are so special, why kind of, I admire personally them, as I know you do, they are very single-minded. They put all the effort on this direction. And for them, for me, it's actually a little bit like, not necessarily liking exactly what this person produced, but admiring the strength of the character. Martin Luther, who was the father of Reformation, he said in German, "Hier stehe da, ich kann nicht anders." I stand here, I can't do differently. So people kind of would be caliber. They say, okay, this is my principles. That's how I do.
It's their nature. It's wonderful. It goes that deep. Yes.
Yes. So you can look at what Euler said to Catherine the Great. He could say, okay, Your Majesty, I'm taking what you're doing. But he stood his ground. He thought what is important on the other way. And also, well, think about kind of, again, as we have a channel about mathematics and mysticism and more kind of spiritual component. I was trying kind of to get this, why it is like this, why exactly Perelman is the person. Don't want kind of people speak about him in the past. He's still a relatively young and vibrant person. Why he is that way, and I would say it's a little bit of kind of the tradition of where he was born in St. Petersburg and all Eastern Europe, etc., etc. Because in Eastern European Greek and then Eastern European tradition, spiritual tradition, there is a more emphasis, I would say, that in the West, at least in the last few centuries, on what do they call bisirebrenki in Slavic languages, which is argios in Greek, which means silverless. There's even no kind of Western counterpart. Because silver, of course, like in Hebrew,
it doesn't translate to consumerism and materialism and possessions as like in a Western society.
And I think it would be worthwhile speaking about this thing, because somebody said, I don't know how it kind of would go, but for me it was very, very strong. I was in one of the, I was studying, doing my project, my scientific project in one of the British cities about 20 years ago. And that time, I don't know if it continues, there was a milk was delivered in people's houses. In the morning, you wake up at 6 o'clock or whatever you need to go, you have milk in front of your door. And somebody told me a beautiful thing, said so much that kind of 20 years ago, I remember that. He said, what would you call the person who would wake up in the morning, collects milk, and bring to every home something that people can go to school, people can go to work, young people, old people, children, etc. You would say this person's great tzaddik, this person's great saint.
Righteous man.
Extremely righteous person. You would kind of almost worship it. But if this person does it for money, he's called milkman. A completely different status in society. So the money, not the money is not important. Money is important. Not that people should not be paid for what they do, but the idea that something is done completely from love, from altruistic feelings, not to forward their position, is very, very important. In, for example, in a Jewish thought, it's kind of leshmo, lo leshmo, whether you do it for the sake of Torah, or you do it for the position, for the money, for the marriage of your children, for, I don't know, for whatever. It doesn't have to be money.
There are a lot of interesting commentary about it as well. I'll tell you something that Mikhail Gromov said. Do you know, the mathematician? He won a Nobel Prize, I believe. He worked with Grigori Perelman, specialist in geometry. I think he's also related, his family related to Butvinik, Mikhail Butvinik, the great chess champion, the founder of the Soviet School of Chess. And he said something like that, if I remember it correctly, about Perelman. He said, I don't, for us, we don't care about the money. We are not solving problems for awards. The money is not important. But what bothers him is that Perelman left mathematics completely. He said Perelman should have stayed at least for teaching the next generations. He feels that Perelman is the greatest mathematician, or the greatest mathematician when it comes to geometry in this world, alive. And he wants him to come back and start teaching and passing his knowledge. That's what he said. Other than that, he doesn't care about the money. He doesn't care that Perelman.
I fully agree with that, because my kind of feeling is he continues doing something. If he doesn't, of course, it is their loss.
He left mathematics altogether. I think as a professional, at least, maybe at home he does something.
So I don't know. I can't comment. And but the thing is that's very interesting what you said, because there are again what I started from. There are two schools of thoughts. Some people in all denominations, no spiritual and scientific things, they use the money as the vehicle to build something. Like in Jewish thought, people would kind of get money to get a yeshiva and kind of to get people to learn the truth, the spirituality. In Christian terms and Buddhist terms could be monastery, in Muslim terms could be madrasah, whatever kind of the tradition dictate. So you can draw this money in order to build something with these things, to offer more. The more you attract, the more you give. And for me personally, it's kind of closer. But at the same time, I am extremely aware about importance of the other stream, that people really declare the poverty and they serve the world through this poverty. And what you said again, what I was trying to, I don't compare, but to give the example of oil and Perelman, that we might be living in different world. Yes, and our world at the moment, and especially our scientific world, I would say, is extremely, not to say corrupt, it's kind of a very strong word, but extremely, put it mildly, result-driven. We have a lot of this expression, which I personally hate, publish or perish. So the scientists, the professors, everybody, in order to keep their position, to keep their money, to keep their jobs, to be seen, they have to publish as much as possible, and it sometimes ends up with probably lack of quality or even exploiting the students to an extent, kind of unfair things happening. There is very often happens in somebody with a power position sign the papers of the people whose contribution to whose work was probably less than deserving. So I was fortunate with my scientific supervisors, whom I offered to co-author. I said, no, the bulk of this thing is yours. It's your idea. Whatever I assisted, it's my pleasure and my privilege. That's what I'm here. I'm here to help young talents to rise. So that's the right attitude. So in our time, in a way, the Perelman's kind of very, very loud saying that I don't want to.
He's the last of the Mohicans. It's a very, yes, especially today you see a lot of probably bright minds in high school, and if they are proved to be successful in certain disciplines, they immediately will say, oh yeah, go and make yourself a startup, get into this business, make money, the people they see as role models are Amazon, Google. These are the aspirations. I want to say something. almost, let's say, maybe to finish on the point, is that the beauty of Perelman is that, you see, I watched several clips about the Poincare conjecture, about Ricci flow, about many, the mathematics of the actual thing. We haven't even spoken about it, and we are not going to start now. No one managed to explain it in 5, 15, 20 minutes. It's difficult. It's a complicated thing, and you need a lot of information prior, in my opinion. But this is how beautiful Grigori Perelman is, that we can speak about him, and we can even continue more and more and further, simply because of the actual human being.
Yes, well, absolutely, because in order to present it and in the format of our channel, it's supposed to be on a certain relatively simple terms.
Mm-hmm.
And unlike other things which we were presenting before, hopefully we'll present further, this is not an easy thing, and it probably would take certain time.
Yeah, but the character itself, Perelman, is enough, just as a character, to speak about. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, but we started with these things because Perelman, because of his rejection of
Mm-hmm.
this money and his kind of rejection of all this paradigm of the rat race for
Mm-hmm.
professorships, for money, for number of times of being interviewed, etc., etc. Not saying that everybody in the rat race, but his kind of very strong idea made him very, very known. Because my kind of challenge would be if it would be another person, because he's unique anyway, because as we said already a couple of times, he's the only one who sorted out the Millennium problem
Yes.
so far. So he's unique. But if his uniqueness from mathematical point of view is not in debate. But if, for example, he happily accepted his $1 million, he lived in a nice place in St. Petersburg or anywhere in the world, would he have the same resonance? Would the people, the millions of people, would like to see him to?
No, I don't think so, because
Exactly.
because he would stay
Exactly.
confined to the territory of mathematics. He would make some headlines because of the $1 million. People have a mercenary mindset. Unfortunately, it's like that. I'm not even saying it is such a harsh way. It sounds like bad when I say mercenary, but when it comes to money, people are always interested. What is the problem that can give you $1 million? And he won it. But he decided to decline it, and he made a very, very important statement, in my opinion. But I think we should end on this point, I guess, unless you have something to say.
Well,
to
last thing
finish.
I want to say to finish that, in a way, for me, and exactly the point what you were making, that Perelman, by his rejection of the money,
Mhm.
he showed certain magic, the magic of the money, the importance of the money, because if it would be something which is not important, the rejection of it would not kind of attract any
Yes,
attention.
exactly.
So it's like Grigori Perelman and the magic of the money.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much,
Thank you very
Professor.
much.
And maybe one day, I know he doesn't give any interviews. We would have loved to make a conversation with Grigori Perelman.
Okay,
Thank you.
watch the space.